Wow, am I seriously rewriting my script with less than 1 week before I upload? Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Alex, and this is the corner of the internet where I mostly post about video games, but I also occasionally talk about other hobbies and interests like my art. I post one full-length video a month, and occasionally might sprinkle in some funny gaming shorts, so if that's the kind of thing you're into, please consider dropping a like or subscribing to my channel. Now, as I mentioned in the opening of this video, this is actually my second take of this review and currently has me about a week behind where I wanted to be in terms of workflow. But if I'm being honest, I really didn't love how my first copy of the script sounded once I had recorded the voiceover, and the editing really wasn't my best work. I had a lot of errors I had to edit out of the original copy when I was reading it off for the recording, and it honestly just didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like me. Despite the fact that I knew it wasn't, it felt half-assed. And that's not the version of my work I want to present to the world. Of course, with that in mind, I do apologize if this video ends up feeling off in any kind of way, or if the upload is late. I functionally scrapped most of my original script and voiceover, save for some bits here and there, with less than a week to go, and am now doing my best with what I have to catch up. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. As you can probably expect of someone who has spent an absolutely heinous amount of their life playing both the Animal Crossing and Pokemon franchises, Pokemon Pokopia has been one of my most anticipated titles for this year. As I mentioned in my What Will I Be Playing in 2026 video, I know a ton of people in both fandoms have spent years yearning for a game that would blend the slice of life, town building, social simulation charm of Animal Crossing with the beloved and nostalgic theming of Pokemon. But now that that game finally exists, does it live up to the hype? Well, Metacritic certainly seems to think so, and it seems like a lot of the player base is in agreement. So, what is it that makes this game so great? First and foremost, I'll get it out of the way now. You guys know, as an artist, I am a sucker for good graphics, and for the style the game was going for, I think the graphics are super cute. The models for each Pokemon look carefully and thoughtfully rendered, and the blending between blocks once they're placed down keeps things looking smooth even between different terrain types. The game maintains the cartoonish feel we expect from a Pokemon game, opting to keep things maybe even a little more on the silly side, considering that we do play as the average trainer's favorite. Wait, I'm not allowed to make that joke? The last video I did catered towards an adult audience only got like 4 views. Well, shit. Playing as Ditto truly does make the whole thing feel incredibly silly at times visually, and the graphics carry that exact vibe very well. It's cartoony, it's goofy, and it's fun. To match those graphics, of course, we have some equally quirky and hilarious moments of dialogue with the Pokemon we meet throughout this game. Kyogre and Gyarados having a country accent, Bulbasaur's "let's get this place humid" moment, whatever is going on here with Magmar, and so much more. The writing is mostly just as silly and hilarious as the actual premise and graphics, and I actually love that. I love a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, and Pokopia is definitely a prime example of that. That said, some of you just caught that "mostly" and perked your ears up. For good reason. You see, I walked into this game assuming it was mostly just Animal Crossing New Horizons with a Pokemon skin. And honestly, as far as gameplay goes, I don't think that's an inaccurate description. Where the game starts to veer off from that track, though, is in the story. This is one of those titles that I walked into expecting a cozy, lightweight experience. Stereotypical, but fun nonetheless. The writers set out to prove me wrong, though, and I think this will be one of those games that you buy for the cutesy graphics and the gameplay, and ultimately remember for its story. Without giving too much away to my viewers who prefer to skip spoilers, the story for this game genuinely shocked me with how hard it pulled at my heartstrings at times, and I don't think I could have asked for anything better from a writing perspective. Obviously, I'm not without my criticisms for this title. Most of my negative opinions come from the controls for building. Admittedly, I kinda suck at building in this game, and that came as a bit of a disappointment considering how much I love building and decorating in Animal Crossing and Minecraft, and I would honestly like to think I'm not too shabby at those things in those games. But I definitely struggled with this one. I have heard mouse controls make building easier, but I've got to be honest and say that while I think mouse controls are certainly cool, and their frequent yet entirely optional use in a lot of games allows for much more player choice than I would normally expect from Nintendo, I honestly kinda suck at mouse controls. I'm primarily a PC gamer, so realistically you'd think the Switch 2 having this feature would be right up my alley. But I think how different the Joy-Cons feel in comparison to a normal mouse just throws me off when I try to use them in this mode. So it wasn't especially helpful for me. That said, of course, I love player choice whenever and wherever possible when it comes to control customization, and I view it as an accessibility win. So I won't complain too much. I recognize that my struggles with building are likely more of a skill issue than an actual critique of the game, as are my struggles with mouse controls. Honestly, though, these criticisms for me are barely worth mentioning. I do want to talk a little bit more about the story, however, I do want to give the people who prefer to skip spoilers in my videos the chance to move ahead. So, if you'd like to avoid spoilers, please fast forward to the timestamp on screen or in the description below, and I'll see you when I get back from talking to the spoiler enjoyers. Everybody gone? Sweet. If you watched the trailers for Pokopia, you probably know that the closest this game has to a human character is the player character Ditto that runs around in a form resembling their trainer. Fortunately, the game doesn't take too long into its 20 to 30 hour story to let you start getting an idea of why there are no humans around. At some point in time, long before the game actually starts, humans began to see rapidly accelerating climate change. Saffron City began experiencing unexplained ground rising, Pewter saw volcanic eruptions leaving the area coated in ash, and Vermilion, once called the Port of Exquisite Sunsets, is left completely shrouded in dark clouds. Climate change is a very core part of the narrative for this game, something that probably doesn't shock many people once you hear it if you know anything about the Pokemon franchise, but the surprise comes from how head-on the problem is addressed and talked about in the game, as well as how raw the feelings surrounding the human response to it feel at times. When scientists observed these phenomena, they came up with a plan. Humanity would be evacuated to space, and their Pokemon would be left behind inside the PC storage system that we use throughout the mainline games. Every few years, the humans would send a team back to do upkeep on the storage system and evaluate the state of the planet. Of course, though, someone was smart enough to plan for the worst. Through hacker confessions found throughout the game, we learn that with the evacuation mission, there were concerns that if anything went wrong, humans may not be able to make these return missions, possibly for several centuries. Because of this, the confessions also reveal that this unnamed character implemented a fail-safe system to the storage system, ensuring that if the system went too long without human maintenance or interaction, the system would scan for any and all possible areas where Pokemon could survive and start releasing them into the wild. Given this information, as well as some other information found throughout the game, while we can't pinpoint exactly how long humans have been gone from the planet, it has been at least long enough for the failsafe to activate, and possibly as long as a few hundred years. One text entry in the game discussing the aforementioned ground rising in Saffron City mentions that scientists hypothesize in a few centuries Saffron could be floating as high as a mountain, something that has already happened by the time Ditto and friends begin to awaken, which means either the climate change accelerated far more after the evacuation, or humans really have been gone for hundreds of years. We may never know which it is, though there is a clip that gives a small glimpse of hope in this otherwise quite saddening theory. This is your absolute last chance to skip having the end of this game spoiled for you. So if you care specifically about the end of the game, head to that same timestamp I mentioned earlier displayed now on the screen. The end of the story, when you finish the team initiation quest, triggers a scene where Ditto and Professor Tangrowth launch a rocket into space full of supplies that recordings of an unnamed character, implied to fittingly be a Team Rocket member, has been having you gather in phases throughout the game. The opening portion of the credit roll follows the rocket as it travels through space, passing and occasionally bonking into planets far, far from Earth. Eventually, scratched and damaged, the rocket reaches a round craft with a ditto-shaped plush inside the window. From this craft emerges a human-shaped figure in a spacesuit, surprised to see the rocket and its supplies. This scene, of course, still leaves some questions and doesn't tie up everything in the game. We don't know if this person is alone, or if they even have the means to get back to Earth, or if this supply ship is ultimately just prolonging the inevitable, the end of humanity in the universe. It's dark and heavy, but credit where it's due, the game doesn't actually make it feel heavy in the moment. Contrarily, the scene actually feels incredibly light and optimistic. It feels like hope, the light at the end of a dark road, the promise of tomorrow. This game, much like Animal Crossing New Horizons, feels like it launched at exactly the right time. Where Animal Crossing felt like a breath of fresh air, a distraction, or maybe a way to connect with your friends and the outside when we really needed it most, Pokopia feels like hope during a time where I think maybe now more than ever, it's desperately needed. This is a game that even in its darkest hours finds joy. The game doesn't linger in those dark moments, it overcomes them. It looks despair in the face with a wide smile and says, "You don't scare me." Pokopia is a stunning story about resilience and hope. It's about finding your joy in the darkest times, and with everything going on around the world and here at home, I think it's one of the most important messages a game could deliver right now. This is a game that I genuinely never expected to have the kind of impact it has had on me. My own building struggles aside, I've been completely blown away by so many builds I've seen coming out of the community, and I cannot believe how amazing this silly little side game about a Ditto truly is. I can genuinely see why Metacritic rated it so highly, and this is one that I think is going to be pretty hard to beat going forward. Anyways, I think that about wraps up my thoughts on Pokemon Pokopia. What did you guys think? Feel free to let me know your thoughts on Pokopia down in the comments below, and remember to never lose your joy, even in the darkest times. Until next time, stay cozy.